Tonight is Shvat. Tonight is Shvat, the 11th month of the year, and we'll talk a little bit about the month of Shvat. Generally, the month of Shvat, which I've already written in the past, spoken about many times, is connected to our relationship to food and a healthy relationship to food. As the progression of the winter months are going forward, we deal first with relationships with people, which is the month of Tevis, and now we're going into the relationship with the stuff in our life, particularly with food. To talk a little bit another idea, connected the month of Shvat with food, which is not written about yet. So Shvat, we know from the Ari and from other Sfarim that Shvat is connected with the formation of the letters. Every month has a particular formation of letters, and the formation of the letters is Hey, Vav, Yud, and then a Hey. That's the formation of the four letters name of Hashem. So Hey, Vav is the reverse order. That's why the first half of Shvat is connected to a harsher month. According to certain midrashim, that's the beginning of the Shvat, is the beginning of the 10 makas, the 10 plagues that happened in Egypt before the going out of Egypt, which happens in the month of Nisan. So it's about a week each one. So that's 8 weeks, the 2 months Shvat and other, and then the first week in Nisan, and then Makas B'charos. And in general, it's considered a harsh time. But the second part of the month, beginning with the 15th day of the month, so the formation of the letter is switched, and it goes back into the direct order, which the Zohar says is when the order of the name of Hashem is in the correct manner. That represents an expansion of Rachamim. And it's related to the phrase that Ari speaks about this, Mishal Simon talks about this in the B'nai Yissaschar and other Tzadikim write, and it's brought on many Sfarim, that it's connected to the passage that says, Hama Yimerana v'hayahu, that there's a verse that says that there's an idea of Tumura, which means when you have a certain offering that's mukdash, that's made sacred to bring as an offering, and then you wish to exchange with another one, then what happens is not only does the other animal become sacred and become mukdash and you have to bring it as an offering, but the original one as well, they're both now considered kodesh, which means that the idea of the month of Shvat, the koyach of the month of Shvat, the energy of the month of Shvat, is this idea of an expansion of Kedusha, of something that's sacred, that it expands outward. The idea of a tzaddik, which is the letter connected to the month, which is tzaddik l'seiv nashli, that the Pasuk initially says that a tzaddik eats in the satisfaction of his belly. L'seiv nashli, which means that he comes from a place of ready satisfaction, is also connected to the month of Asher, the tribe of Asher. Asher is it represents the spiritual attribute of tainug, of pleasure, of keser. These are a lot of words. And Shvat is also the month that the Torah says that Moshe began to translate the Torah from Rosh Chodesh Shvat up until this passing, which is Zayin Adar, which is 36 days, corresponding to the 36 tracts in the Talmud, 36 lights that in the beginning of the creation story, the Aragonos, but this 36, and also the idea is as a translation from all these imagery. What we have is that Shvat, the month of Shvat, has a certain type of quality that allows for the broadening of our perception and also of the revealing of Kedusha, of what is sacred, into things that seem to be also in the mundane. Now, let's try to understand this on a much deeper level. Shvat, also the name Shvat, is like a shevet, represents a rod, which could be seen as something that's strict, and that's connected obviously with the makas, which is connected with the rod of Moshe. But shevet, also, the Alter Rebbe writes in Torah Or that the word shevet comes from an expression of hamshacha, something that's being drawn down. And like Koichava de Shavet, the Chazal talk about a flying star, that it represents something that's, you see it in star, like it's streaked. So it means that there's a drawing down. So let's understand what this drawing down is of, And if you look at the months in terms of its sequence, it's the 11th month of the year. And the 11th, there's 10 we know is a Davar Shabbat. 10 represents a sacred number, a holy number. That we don't say something that's Kedusha only when there are 10. 10 represents a type of shleimus, a type of wholeness within the creation. When there's a Rosh Teich and Soif, and every Rosh Teich and Soif has a Rosh Teich and Soif, and then there's a center point, whereas there's a beginning, a middle, and the end. And every beginning, middle, and end has a beginning, middle, and the end, and then there's a center point, which in total is 10, obviously corresponding to the 10 spheres, and the 10 makas, which is when the spheres go in a misdirected direction, and then there's realignment, and then after the 10 makas, and the world was created through the 10 mamaras, so through the 10 utterances, and then there was the makas, then there was the plagues, and then there was a recalibration, which then is the receiving of the 10 commandments, the Seres HaDibros. So 10 is a sacred number. Yud Aleph, the 11th, represents when Kedusha enters into a place where it usually is not expressed. So for example, a classic example of this idea of Yud Aleph generally represents Klippa, the source of the construct of concealment of the divine. But when there happens this type of transformation, you see this with the Keteras, there was 11 types of spices, and Chalbana, Chazal tells Christus, like Chalbana was a very foul odor. One of the 11 spices. There's also more, which could be chayat tmeima from an impure animal, the blood from an impure animal, some type of reduction of the blood creates this idea for incense. And the idea of the leaven, the Keteris, was that it elevated even what is Keteris, literally, like the way the Rambam writes this, is that the Keteris was brought in the Beis HaMikdash, the incense, to eradicate the negative smell of blood and gore that was from the offerings. And the deeper understanding, what the Zohar says, which is really a deeper understanding of what the Rambam himself writes, like the Kotzker says, is that it sweetens even the places that seem to be unsavory. That the Poishi Yisrael, even the people that seem to be connected to the opposite of goodness, are transformed through this process of 11. So 11 is the drawing down of Kedusha into a place where it seems to be that place doesn't have Kedusha yet. The drawing down of Kedusha, the drawing down of something that's sacred into that place. So let's try to understand this construct, that it's 11 and it's going down to 11. And it's interesting, and also very importantly to understand, that on the 11th of Shvat, that the Rebbe, which is the Nasi, the generation, the Rebbe becomes a Rebbe on the 11th of Shvat, and the Rebbe generally is connected to the number 11, as his birthday is also on Yud Aleph Nisan, which is the idea of 11. So 11th of the 11th, the drawing down into that place. Let's try to understand this with Behektam, a fundamental teaching of the Baal Shem HaKadosh. So the Baal Shem Tov writes, the Baal Shem Tov teaches, and it's brought down in Tzavtas B'neach, and it's brought down and told us many places, many of the students of the Baal Shem bring down this idea, that he says, Shamati I've heard from my teacher, Kol asher timtza yodcha lasses b'koich aseh. Anything that you can find in your hand to do, you shall do. This is a verse in Koheles. So the Baal Shem says on this, that there's a medrash that says that Chanoich was Chanoich was Sar Shaloilam, the prince of the world, and he was transformed to become an angel. Chanoich, the pasuk says, Chanoich is Enoch, or is a character in the Torah. The Torah speaks very shortly about him. It says that Chanoich walked with Hashem, and then he disappeared. He was no longer. And the Medrash says that he was transformed. He became part of Matarton, Mem Testes. And how did he achieve this high level of transcendence, that he transcended his physicality and became an angel? However we understand this, is because he was a cobbler, and when he would stitch the shoes, the upper and lower parts of the shoes, when he would, this is what it says in the Medrash, that when he would stitch the shoes, the upper part of the leather, part of the shoe and lower part of the shoe, and stitch them together, he was having intention to connect the upper worlds and the lower worlds. So the Baal Shem says that that this is what a person should do always. A person should be yachid. Kol hashatim seidach say means everything a person does he should do. It means he should do with intention. We'll understand what this means. And through that a person fulfills the obligation which says, in all the ways you will know me. Says the Baal Shem, this is also already an earlier teaching that's found in Megal Amukas and Oifim Kofei, that da'eyu comes from the word da, know, intimate, to be intimate with Hevav, which is the name of Hashem. So b'chol derchecha da'eyu, says the Baal Shem Tov, means that a person should be intimate with Hashem, b'chol derchecha, and everything that they do, they should know, they should be knowing, they should have an intimate relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu in everything that they do. Just to understand what this teaching is, because it's a very, very fundamental Torah, very fundamental teaching in Torah Chassidus and teachings of Chassidus. And we'll see how this develops. So normally, there are two statements. It's brought down in the Rambam, Shemana Prakim, and Chazdeya, and in Torah Shulchan Aruch. There are two statements in Chazal. One is, the sages say two things. One is, Kol Masecha Yiyu L'Shem Shamayim. That everything a person does, the Mishnah says in Avos, should be done for the sake of heaven. And one is the pasuk of Mishnah, B'chol derechach in all the ways you should know him. Now, what is B'chol, and Chazal, the Gemara says in Brachas, that this verse, B'chol derechach is one of the most important verses in the Torah, one of the most important statements in the Torah, in all of Tanakh. What's the difference between Kol Masecha Yiyu L'Shem Shamayim, everything that you do, you should do for the sake of heaven, versus B'chol derechach in all your actions, everything that you do, you should know Hashem. Kol Masecha Yiyu L'Shem Shamayim means, everything you do for the sake of heaven means, in life, there is a means and there's an end. This is one conception, this is one paradigm. For example, there is the tahalich, there's a process, and then there's the end, which is the tachlis, the end result. Let's say a person is involved in doing work. It's a laborer, or let's say a business person. And you ask the person, why are you doing work? And the person's a God-fearing person. She would say that the reason why we're doing this work is so I should have an income, I should make money. And by making money, I could support my family, that they can eat. And by eating and being healthy, they can serve Hashem, and they can daven, they can pray, or they can sit and learn Torah, they can learn Torah. So the making of the money, or the doing, let's say we'll say the cobbler, the person that's a shoemaker, let's say. The person that's making the shoes, the intentions of making the shoes is not for the shoes himself, which means I would rather not have to make the shoes. Let's say you have to get from point A to point B, and you really want to be in point B. But in order to get to point A to point B, there's a path that you have to get to. You have to walk this path. So walking from point A to point B is not your intention. Your intention is to be in point B. It's impossible to get to point B without moving from point A. That you are in one place, let's say you were in your home, in your homeland, and now you're exiled from that land, which means you're separated from it. And in order to get back into that place, you would have to travel to get there. So the concept of exile, this is why exile is related to the word gal. Gal means a wave, it's a process. It's when there's a separation between who you are and what your destination is. And you're journeying to get to the place of the destination. And the intention of the journey is to get to the destination. There's no inherent intention within the destination, within the journey itself. It's just the journey is to get to the destination. That's one paradigm of thinking. But that's a paradigm of thinking from a perspective of galus, a perspective of exile, where things are separate from self. In the teachings of Chassidus, the Torah of the Baal Shem Tov of Chassidus was that there was a revealing of Torah Shal Mashiach. There was a glimmer of the Torah of the future that was revealed in the present. So when we talk about Olam Haba, the world to come is the world of the future. We're going to get there. It'll be in the future. Ani Mamin B'Yis HaMashiach, I believe, complete faith in the coming of Mashiach that will come in a future tense. On a very deep level, the teachings of Torah Chassidus, which is connected to Yechidah Nefesh, the highest level of the soul, like it's written in Kundas Torah Chassidus. It's connected to the Or Torah Mashiach, connected to the light of Mashiach, like the Vladniker says. It's connected to the Oyer, like the Baruch Mezhebus tells us. When there was a revealing of the Torah Chassidus, it was a glimmer of the future and the present. And then when there was a glimmer of the Torah Mashiach of the future, which is Geula. What is Geula? What is Gaal? What is redemption or redeeming? Gaal is when you have the same Gal, the same wave, but in between the wave, there's an Aleph. The Aleph is the presence, is the Alufa Shalolim, is the master of the universe, is the creator, is the light of Hashem, is the Oyer. That the Gaal is redemption is when there's in the process, there's already the destination is already present. So how does this translate in life? When the Baal Shem Tov came along and taught this and said that there's two levels. One is what it says classically, that, and generally they weren't really distinguished, that b'chol derchecha deyu, in all your ways you should know him. And the idea of kol masecha yishem shemayim, all your actions should be for intention of heaven, was seen both similar practices, which is that I do things for intention, for a higher intention, which means there's no inherent value in the thing in itself. So let's say, for example, if you use the example of Chanoich, that was a cobbler and he was stitching shoes together. His intention was, he's stitching the shoes together, but his intention is really something that's outside the event. This is the way one way you can think about it, up until the Baal Shem, which means you're thinking about it in this way, that his intention is to miyached kutcher brich and shchita. His intention is not the actual physical action that he's doing, but he strips his mind from the intention of physically putting these two things together, and he's thinking about what does it mean cosmically, or on a macrocosmic level. On a microcosmic level, how do we unify the upper world and the lower world, the spiritual and the physical? So he's physically doing an act, but his mind is completely somewhere else. Which means that he sees the act to facilitate as a means that allows him to, and induces him to a state where he can meditate or be in a higher state of consciousness and thinking about some type of cosmic event of upper and lower unity. Comes along the Baal Shem Tov and says, since the Torah of Baal Shem Tov, Torah Chassidus, the teachings of Chassidus is a revealing of a light of Mashiach, of the future that's already revealed in the present, and paradoxically, that awakens even a stronger desire to have the fullness of the present in every moment. So the machakaloi, a stronger desire for Mashiach, for the coming of Mashiach, when the whole world will enter into the state, is even aroused by by living in this state. So when a person lives with this consciousness, so then it's transformed that it's no longer kol masecha yil l'shem shemayim, that you're doing this act for the intention of something else, but the act in itself is an end in itself, because it's a geula state, it's a redemptive state. It's not a process, a means to get to an end. The end is already revealed in the means. Not the means is the end. That's one way of thinking, but it's the opposite. It's the reverse. We're being pulled by the future. So within the means is already the end, which means that the thing in itself has inherent value. That when a person is to use an analogy that's, interestingly enough, Rabbi Saul Salanta gives this example, is when he talks about this medrash that says that Chanoich was a cobbler and he was having intention to connect the heavens and earth, the upper and the lower, the spiritual and the physical. He says what that means is basically when you pay a shoemaker to fix your shoes, the greatest intention that the shoemaker can have is to think about fixing your shoes. That's the highest intention. Because the moment the person is thinking about some other thing, besides fixing your shoes, they're stealing from you. You pay a person $10 to fix your shoes for that half hour that he's going to do the work, let's say. So what is the highest level of intention of a cobbler should be doing when he's fixing shoes? Is fixing shoes. So this we can take even on a deeper level, not just on an ethical level, which Rabbi Saul Salanta is saying, but on a deeper level saying that everything that you're doing, B'chol derchecha, this is what the Baal Shem Tov is teaching. B'chol derchecha, in all your ways. It's not Darkei Hashem. It's not the ways of Hashem. so to speak. It's not sacred ways. B'chol derchecha, you're walking down the street, you're eating, you're sleeping, you're tying your shoes, you're taking out the garbage. You're doing something very, very trivial and very mundane, apparently. Comes along the Baal Shem and says, B'chol derchecha de'eyu da, you should be intimate in this action that you're doing. You should be intimate with the presence of Hashem. Let's read you a few lines over here from in Teres Menachem, Yud Beis Gimel Tav Sasha Chaf Beis. This is 1962, and the Rebbe writes like this: that we find these two statements: Chol Masachi Yishem Shemayim and B'chol Derech Hadeu. Every act you do should be for the sake of heaven, and everything you do is B'chol Derech Hadeu. And he says like this: B'chol Masachi Yishem Shemayim. Everything you do for the sake of heaven means that you're doing this act that something good will come out of it eventually. And he brings down from the Tanya, the old Alter Rebbe writes in Tanya, that you eat food l'shem shemayim la'aved Hashem b'koyach achila, that you can, so you can have koyach, you have strength after you eat to serve Hashem. So that's b'chol. That's b'chol masachi l'shem shemayim. But there's even a higher level of serving Hashem. The higher level of serving Hashem is not just you do something for the intention of something else. That's soif kol sof tiyim is that te'elas b'nim shal mitzvah. Aba chol derechad eyu. Gufa nasis is kashas b'kadosh baruch hu. Hachilu loy kedei kedisha achakach yavin toiv yoyse in your b'gemara. Not that you're eating, so eventually you'll have strength to understand a complicated, let's say, piece of Gemara, of Talmud. But the physical act of eating itself becomes a way of serving Hashem. Because the person knows when they're eating that there's they have to release a certain type of spark that's in their food. And therefore, they eat that food and they're releasing the spark. So what is the Rebbe is really basically saying, which is quite fascinating, that even though this says clearly in the teachings of the Baal Shem many times, it's not found for hundreds of years in such a clear way until now, until this generation, Dara Shvi, until this present generation, this type of expression of this idea, which is that when we talk about the Gila of Torah from Mashiach and the revealing of the Torah of Mashiach, the teachings of Mashiach, which is the revealing of the future and the present, a glimmer, a possibility of the future, or a glimmer, a light of the future that shines into the present. What that means is now that every single thing that you do, and this is the way a person has to live. You're talking about eating, so you can say, "I'm eating now." Because so later I have strength to serve Hashem. But while I'm eating the act of eating now, it just means to then. It's like walking across the street to get across the street. Or you can say, on a deeper level, if Hashem wants me to eat right now, because I am hungry, and that's the way I live is through eating, and Hashem wants me to live. And on a deeper level, what I'm going to be eating, and the fact that I'm drawn to be eating these particular foods, and not other types of foods. Let's say I'm drawn to eat savory foods, or sweet food, or dairy foods, or whatever type of food that I'm drawn to, is because there's a nefesh, there's a soul connection between me and the foods that have to be eaten, which means this act in itself becomes a sacred activity. I'm not doing it so I should in the future. I'm right now being intimate with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, with the Creator, with Hashem, in the physical act of eating. The physical act of eating is the awareness. We just have to have this awareness that Hashem wants me to eat. I am open to what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants from me at this present moment. What does Hashem want from me right this present moment? Maybe to sleep, maybe to eat, or maybe to take out the garbage. Whatever Hashem wants me to do at this moment, there's inherent value in the thing in itself. Not so it could lead me to another place. But there's a higher revealing, which is the revealing really of of not of an oir that comes from a moir, which is a light that comes from the source of light, which is a process of revelation, but it's the essence, it's the atzmius, it's the essence of Hashem that's being revealed. That's really Mashiach. And the essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is presence. It's not process. It is what it is right now. So whatever I'm doing, and every act that I'm doing becomes a sacred act. And that's why we have to live our lives. We have to live our lives, or we could. That's the opening, the possibility that was brought down by the revealing of Torah Chassidus, the revealing of the core of the Razan of the secrets that was revealed, that we have the possibility to live our lives not just only as a means to an end, but to live our lives really fully present at every single moment, not as a means to an end, as an end in itself. And in that act itself be a sacred act, to become a sacred act. It's just about changing our consciousness of recognition that we're always in service of, we're always in dialogue with, we're always in the presence of Hashem. And Hashem is always constantly inviting us to be in a relationship. Sometimes the relationship is through learning, sometimes the relationship is through davening, and sometimes the relationship is through taking out the garbage. And that's okay. Whatever we're doing, we have to be fully present with that awareness that we're connecting. And this is really the deeper level of the Kedusha, the oil of Kedusha, the light of the sacred light, the oil of Kedusha that we say on Shvat, that's revealed in the month of Shvat, and particularly on the 11th, in the 11th month, I'm correct, the 11th of Shvat, the idea of 11, which means that it permeates even to the places where for hundreds and thousands of years, the structure was more, because it was gullus, because it was by definition it was in exile, at least from the time of the Churban, from the time of the destruction of Beis Hamikdash. So since it was a construct in a paradigm of exile, it was always a process to get to. It was always a means to reach a point. So since it was a means to reach a point, so what does a person serve Hashem? A person serves Hashem through davening, through prayer. A person serves Hashem through giving charity. A person serves Hashem through learning Torah. That's the way the person serves Hashem. But when a person is walking down the street, or a person is trying to make an income, or a person is trying to, owns a bakery and is feeding people, okay, that's a nice thing, but that's not the thing in itself. I'm just, have a bakery so I can make money, so I can go learn, so I can support my children, so they can practice Torah mitzvahs. So it's just the means to get to an end. That's the Ora Gullus. That's the light of Gullus. But then there's a revealing of the Ora Gula, and there's a revealing of the light of redemption, which reveals itself specifically in the 11th hour, so to speak, in the 11th level, the level that's even the level of which apparently is the place of Klippa, because ultimately there'll have to be a complete transformation of all of creation. That's already the revealing of the presence of Hashem in the immediate moment, and the constant awareness of being in this very moment, and being in the moment, not as a means to an end, but an end in itself. And this 11th month then brings about the revealing of the 12th month, which becomes the entire month, becomes a Chodesh Shenapchu, the month of Adar, which is a completely transformed month, which the transformation is so deep, which when we get to the Adar we'll talk about it, which is the idea that the transformation is so deep in the month of Adar that even Amalek, even the Keser, the highest, deepest, most complicated form of negativity, which is like self-doubt and uncertainty and just putting yourself down, all those terrible aspects, there's a transformation of suffix as well. There's a transformation of that, and that's why the way Purim is celebrated is particularly in the body, fully embodied, like the almost the exaggeration of the body, because it's all part of the process of the redemption, of the redemptive process, where the end, the body, and the material desires and the physical desires of a person to eat, to sleep, to do things that are just physical, just what every human being has to do, just like any creature in this creation, or even a vegetation has to do. Everything has to eat. This is ambiguous. Everything has to eat. Everything has to be nourished. Saying that even that aspect is not just a means to get to an end, but the kedusha, the level of sacredness, of connectivity, and our dveikus to Hashem, to be connected to Hashem, is in every single moment, and not just as a means to an end, but an end in itself. And this is the celebration of this type of recognition. So if a person thinks to himself and says, Hashem didn't give me the opportunity to sit and learn the whole day. Hashem didn't give me the opportunity to sit and daven the whole day. Maybe it would be beautiful if I sat and prayed the whole day. It would be beautiful if I was able to sit, I could sit in the base medrash and sit and learn the entire day. But Hashem put me in a situation where I can't do that, and it's not possible. Don't feel bad, because that's what Hashem wants from you right now. Just like Hashem wants the Talmid Chacham to sit and learn the entire day, and the other tzaddik maybe to sit and daven the whole day and say Tehillah, and Hashem wants you to do work. And that's what you're contributing. That's what you're connecting to Hashem. There's certain sparks of soul that is connected to your shoyesh and neshama, to your soul, that only you can elevate in this world, and only by what you're doing in this world can you elevate them. Just come to it with a certain level of consciousness, with awareness. We should have that awareness that we're always in dialogue and always connecting to, and always in the presence of the living God. All right. Have a wonderful, beautiful month. Agud Chodesh.